So this is the first case. It is actually referred to me because the glaucoma was not controlled. The IOP was very high and the fundus had a very advanced cupping. And yes, the fields were also severely damaged. So what I did was added another glaucoma medication and was reviewing. But on re-examining the disc, I found, isn't it much paler than what you expect? Yes, I ordered an MRI and it was a large meningioma with a mass effect. So it's not only that it presents as normal tension glaucoma, it can present to you also with a very high IOP. It underwent posterior sagittal craniotomy, but even after that, the IOP continued to be high and it required anti-glaucoma medications. A similar case, again on anti-glaucoma medications, again the disc looks slightly paler and the fields thought to be following a vertical meridian. I ordered an MRI. Again, it showed a pituitary macroadenoma. So what we have to here is a vigilant examination of the pallor of the disc and ordering a prompt neuroimaging. And it does not only present as normal tension glaucoma, the IOP can be high because of the venous congestion or the increased episcleral venous pressure, and you'll have to manage the glaucoma also in the follow-up period. So just few points to differentiate between a non-glaucomatous optic neuropathy. Here the pallor is more and the central vision is affected much earlier, and you have early onset RAPD here and also the fields following the vertical meridian. Now this is a case which presented with increased IOP and the angles were closed, and it was managed like angle closure glaucoma with the ARC PI. And on fundus examination, what was different was this dilated vessels. And I thought of increased episcleral venous pressure, or is it an anophthalmos? Did all the investigation, B scan was normal, axial length was normal, and then ordered for MRA and MRI, and the diagnosis was a fibrous dysplasia. So it requires a CT. It's fibrous dysplasia causing the optic nerve narrowing and the superior orbital fissure narrowing, leading to glaucoma here. So craniofacial fibrous dysplasia can cause glaucoma either by elevated episcleral venous pressure from orbital venous compression, or it could be mechanical angle closure due to an orbital crowding, or it could present as an optic nerve compression. So this is another series of case which presented as a bilateral angle closure glaucoma. Yes, the most common with history of migraine on topiramide. But this is the OCT showing the ciliocoroidal effusion. But this gentleman presented with bilateral angle closure glaucoma, and it was following a single dose of acetazolamide following myringotomy. So the drug which is used to treat glaucoma can precipitate an angle closure glaucoma too. So this is a study which shows the ciliocoroidal effusion even after cataract surgery with a dose of acetazolamide. So this is a story of another person. Again, bilateral angle closure. Here the lens iris diaphragm was also pushed forward like a subluxated lens. This is the ASOCT showing the picture with ciliary effusion and the iris lens diaphragm pushed forward. And this patient was on antipsychotic drugs. He was on 3 drugs. And similarly, another young man with 3 antipsychotic drugs along with lithium showing a severe ciliocoroidal effusion and also choroidal detachment presenting as very high IOP. So what is the clinical take-home point here is any bilateral angle closure disease elicit a drug history in them. So these are some of the common drugs that can precipitate an angle closure glaucoma. Now this is a story of another patient, again presented as bilateral angle closure glaucoma with severe headache, eye pain, redness. But here, what was the diagnosis? With the B scan, we could pick up multiple exudative CDs, exudative RDs, that is because of the Vogt-Anaghi-Harada syndrome, which can also present as an angle closure glaucoma. And this is a story of a lady who presented with redness, pain, watering, bilateral redness, and was actually treated from outside as conjunctivitis. Again, here B scan could pick up the diagnosis. This is the OCT picture showing the ciliachoroidal effusion. It was a posterior scleritis with a T sign. So all these cases also can present to you as a glaucoma. This story is of a 75-year-old male who was referred to as acute angle closure glaucoma. What is slightly different here was he had a slight amount of proptosis and chemosis. And that, again, ASOCT showing severe effusion, and you could see the scleral thickening there. And this was an orbital cellulitis presenting as an angle closure glaucoma, and he was treated in that way. So what do you learn from here is, all these have a common mechanism causing glaucoma is anti-rotation, ciliachoroidal effusion. Always do an ASOCT and B scan. You can clinch the diagnosis. So why do you want to get the diagnosis here? The treatment is with cycloplegics like atropine and addressing the underlying disease, whereas in acute angle closure glaucoma, you're going to treat with miotics. Now, this is a story of a man who was already on treatment with CML, with imatinib. Again, he presented with, this was actually a one-eyed patient, the other eye had pseudophakic and high myopia with choroidal degeneration. This eye presented with anterior rotation of the ciliary body with the lens, and he had severe exudates in the AC. That was the reaction that you see in the anterior chamber. And this was either due to the lymphatic leukemic infiltrates or due to the drug itself. So we could refer him back to the treating doctor to look for the cause, and we treated him with the cycloplegics, and this is what is now with the steroids also. It could be a uveitic masquerade too. And there's another case, again presented as glaucoma with NVI, and we could pick up those iris nodules there. And this was a known case of CA esophagus presenting as iris mets. And he also had metastasis in the liver and in the brain too. So on literature search, though rare, iris metastasis could occur. So that was picked up. It's also present as glaucoma. So now coming to some other glaucomas which you suspect in children. Usually you get in children a large cup, and you do an inferior field effect. And then you try to name it a glaucoma, and you go in term of evaluation in that line. But what we miss is just a history taking of a perinatal events, whether in perinatal birth, asphyxia, or delayed milestone, history of frequent fall, a squinting. And if this present, you order an MRI and you pick up the perinatal cerebral injury you see as periventricular hyperintense lesions. So that is the hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, which can present in children with enlarged cupping and field defects due to the hypoxic damage in the retrogeniculate pathway. And you have to ask history of the perinatal history of birth, asphyxia, and you can do an MRI to diagnose this. So this is what we usually miss and unnecessarily evaluate in terms of glaucoma in a child. And this is a story of a child who presented for refractive error in unilateral, and he was evaluated for this. And then what we saw was an asymmetric cup in one eye, and the other eye was normal. But then even the OCT, and what clinched the diagnosis was a gonioscopy, where in one eye you could see a synechia, where the other eye was open. So then on history taking and seeing the previous records, we could get a history of the child being treated as viral keratouveitis with secondary glaucoma, and the cupping had occurred when the IOP was high at that time, and now there was no treatment required because the pressures were normal. So if just doing some clinical examination like gonioscopy can pick up disease even in children. And this was a boy who presented with IOP of 32 and 33, very high myopia. So just a drop, dilating drop, gives you the diagnosis of microspherophakia. And this is a story of a boy who presented to the retina department with retinal detachment, and post-retina surgery, he was referred to glaucoma department with IOP high in one eye. But at the glaucoma department, we detected the pressures to be high both the eyes. And he had some Marfanoid-like features and was very resistant to treatment, underwent TRAB, but silicone oil blocked it, and then we had to do a GDD also in this patient. And suspecting Marfan or Stickler, and similar history, another boy was a 20-year-old, again presented after our retinal detachment surgery with pressures high in one eye, but we detected pressure in the other eye too, and again resistant to treatment, underwent TRAB. So we suspected Stickler in both and ordered genetic analysis. Yes, it was Stickler in the first boy, but the second boy, the diagnosis was totally different. It was an Aicardi-Gouthier syndrome with Sheraton, and it had both features of Aicardi-Gouthier and Singleton-Merten syndrome. And what he had was a normal early development with neurological regression, delayed psychomotor development with spastic paraparesis and brain changes. That is features of Aicardi. And he also had dental abnormalities, and he had severe psoriatic rashes. Even I thought he was on treatment with some dermatology and with Ayurvedic preparation for the psoriasis. I thought it could be a steroid-induced glaucoma too initially, but only genetic analysis gives us the diagnosis. So sometimes this also helps you in coming to a diagnosis. So this is a story of another male who was treated for vitreous hemorrhage and then secondary glaucoma after surgery. Again, gonioscopy, we could pick an NVA with synechial angle closure, and later he developed multiple vascular occlusions with branched retinal vein and artery, and then he had NVI in the other eye, and on investigation it was a protein S deficiency who was managed with a hematologist. So we diagnosed that from ophthalmology point of view and then referred him. Now, like Sir was telling, even brimonidine could bring about reactions in the eye. So long-term glaucoma medication, what we tend to miss is the chronic conjunctivitis can cause fibrosis and thickening of the tarsus, and these symblyfron and fornical shortening, and also subconjunctival scarring, which we tend to miss unless we look for. Why are these important? Because for glaucoma surgeons, it leads to failure unless you address this. So these are the things which we can miss unless we look for. This is the drug-induced cicatricial conjunctivitis. Now, this is a story of a male who presented with normal tension glaucoma, but the splinter hemorrhage keeps on recurring. When it resolves, and then he comes again with a splinter hemorrhage. And then we thought it could be like not responding to treatment. We thought it could be a nocturnal hypertension, referred to a physician, but turned out to be he had an obstructive sleep apnea. And this is found to be associated risk factor for glaucoma too. So I come to the last end of my story. This is actually a dance teacher of my daughter. She came to me a family screening because her sister is blind from one eye, already TRAB done, and also in the other eye she has advanced field defect with maximum AGF. So on screening her, I found the angles closed. I did a PI for her. But on fundus examination, this is the picture. So again, pallor more than cupping. And then I could elicit, see, this is the field, but it's not corresponding to the disc changes at all. Mother had a history of RP. Because of the pallor, I ordered an MRI. It turned out to be normal. Mother had a history of RP. So I did an ERG, that was normal, just VP, reduced amplitude. I still have no clue to what the diagnosis is. Some stories are like that, we don't have end. Just trying to find out the reason. I think I can take expert opinion from the expert people here. So what I want to convey is the changes in the disc, the changes in the field are just the tip of iceberg. The other parts of the eyes and the other parts of the body will have many stories to tell you which can lead you to a diagnosis. Thank you.